Branch 3. On the way to Jerusalem, as he was passing along between Samaria and Galilee, and as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers, who stood at a distance and lifted up their voice, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said to them, Go show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice, and fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus answered, Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God, except for this foreigner? And he said to him, Rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well. Luke 17. This story makes it clear that gratitude pleases Jesus very much, while its absence brings him sorrow. The next verse here we're going to look at is gratitude. And of all of these, this is the one that's been the most difficult for me to work out in my own life. And while I understand at the head level that I have many things to be grateful for, getting it to percolate down into my heart and then have my heart tell my mouth that I should be grateful has been a whole different ballgame. And part of it, the change came about from this story. Because all 10 of these men showed humility, they showed reverence, they showed obedience, they showed faithfulness. When he said, Go show yourselves to the priests, all 10 of them hopped up and went. They were saying, Jesus, have mercy on us. They immediately acknowledged that Jesus was different, maybe not necessarily the Son of God, but they were putting faith into who he was and the message that he was delivering. They were obedient, and they were faithful to see it through. But at the same time, we've got to be careful that we don't pass judgment on the 9 who did not return to express their gratitude. Maybe, using a little holy imagination, to be a leper in that time meant that you couldn't have anything to do with your family. Maybe he hadn't hugged his mom's neck in years, Maybe he wanted to go see his dad. Maybe, there's all sorts of things that could have happened. And the moment they were healed, they're like, woohoo! And often they're gone. So I want to be careful about not casting stones at the 9 that didn't return. But this one that did return, Jesus called out and said, this guy, this foreigner, was the only one that came back. Rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well. Gratitude is the response to a gift. And just as there's a wide range of gifts, so correspondingly there's also a wide range of gratitude. For lesser gifts, such as giving someone the time of day, sometimes a simple thanks is all that's needed. You're going into the store, somebody holds the door open, thanks man, appreciate that. That's just courtesy, and then you courteously reply thank you as well. But there are large gifts. Life itself, the miraculous cure. We're going to partake of the Lord's Supper here in a little bit. Those demand more gratitude than just that simple thank you. God's generous, even prodigal presence in our life lays claim to a form of gratitude that is not filled by just a saying thank you, but requires us to express our gratitude in action. Just as he gives so much, even before we were Christians, much less after, we should live in such a way that we are continually expressing our gratitude to him. Obviously, that would include some kind of bond of friendship with him. That's what we're trying to find here, deepen our relationship with him, and a commitment to service. God wants our full gratitude because he wants our continued friendship, which enables him to lavish upon us more gifts. We know how easy it is to be ungrateful. I raise my hand first. How our preoccupation with ourselves can cause us to forget our benefits as well as our benefactor. In addition, gratitude weakens our bonds with our God and neighbor. great saints of the old, a guy by the name of Bernard said, "Gratitude is a searing wind which dries up the springs of pity, the dew of mercy, the streams of grace." It's a fancy way of saying that ingratitude leads to spiritual isolation. Ingratitude leads to the springs of God's pity, the dew of His mercy, the stream of His grace drying up and with coming away from you. Peter says it, Proverbs says it in a different way, but the thought is the same, that God knows the proud from afar off. And ingratitude is just another form of pride because it's all about me. It's a preoccupation with me. And Bernard understood, Peter understood, the writer of Proverbs understood that a weakened relationship with God, God knowing us from afar off, also means that a weakened relationship with everyone around us. Look at our tree. It simply grows, right? It raises its branch skyward in gratitude of being planted. It puts deep roots down in the soil and where it's planted and takes what it has and grows from that. But I've wrestled with God before, and while I didn't use these terminology, this is what I said. That tree, me, I didn't have any choice but to grow where I've planted, and I can't change. The tree can't get up and say, that ground over there is better, right? It's got to grow right where it's at. But the tree does that. It just grows. And so many of us would whine and complain about where we were planted instead of just growing. And I want you to think about, what can you really change? You can't change your parents. You can't change the education at least you had when you were a child. You can't change the money that your parents did or did not have. You can't change anything that's more than 5 minutes old. You know, as a child, when we celebrated Christmas and we had the stockings on there, and we came running down on Christmas morning and we just dumped the stockings out, and we wanted to know what was in the stocking, right? I think that we should be grateful for the the legs that go in the stockings, not what comes out of the stockings on Christmas morning. The very idea of life, and this is where the Lord really brought me to on my journey of gratitude. The very idea of life itself is what we should be grateful for. I said earlier, there's only two forms of being, and technically, while I was right there, that's incorrect. There's really only one form of being, because the only other option is non-being. The very fact that you exist is a gift. And even the bad things that happen to you along the way point to the reality of joy, point to the goodness of happiness, point to the goodness and the wonder that is what we call love and friendship. And not only that, but as Christians, we should be doubly grateful that we have a relationship with the one that created all those things, the one that gave us life itself. And then the bonus is we belong to the family of God. And yet we walk around like ingrates, whining and complaining about everything from the weather to politics to sermons to our job status. But I want to be clear here. As a victim of abuse myself, I'm not saying you should be grateful for the abuse. But I want to suggest that there are things about God, about yourself, about the family of God that you could only learn coming out of those things. That God is going to show Himself in mighty and powerful ways if we'll let Him. But part of it is that we have to be grateful for today and allow Him to move in our lives. Likewise, for those of us who are waiting for a miracle of healing, it can be hard, and I get that. But there's some things that you can only learn in the waiting. There's some things that you can only learn about the family of God as you wait for the miracle. There's some things that you can only learn about God that you can only learn in the waiting. So again, don't be grateful for the thing that the sickness or the infirmity itself. But as Paul encourages us, give thanks in everything. Because God can give us more grace when we're grateful. And the virtue of gratitude by itself is enough to counteract envy, avarice, and sloth. So what can we be grateful for? Well, number one, we can be grateful for God and His grace. Do not be anxious about everything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Philippians 4:6. So many years I say I wasted them, but kind of shaking my fist at God, saying, God, you should not have saved me. I was not worth saving. God, you shouldn't love me. You shouldn't do miracles. You shouldn't call me to preach. You shouldn't put me out on the mission field. God, you shouldn't do all of this. I was being ungrateful to God for His grace. That's right. He didn't have to do all of those things. That's a true statement. And yet He did it anyway. God, you shouldn't have restored my marriage. You shouldn't have restored my family. You shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have done all that. But the reality is He did. And I can either accept it and be grateful for it or continue to be ungrateful. Number two, we can be grateful for others. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so clings to us so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that's set before us. Grateful for others. When I was in junior high and my home life wasn't the greatest, I had a principal and a teacher who went out of their way to encourage me to do well in school. And at the time I was like, you just shut up, leave me alone, I don't care. But for some reason they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Right? And both of them encouraged me to be more, to rise above my circumstances. And neither one of them got to see me today, but they planted seeds along the way. It would have been so easy just to drop out. Be done with this. But they, every day, encouraged me to keep going. After I became a Christian, I've already talked about Brother Marble. I talked to, I got other men in my life. I don't have a physical relationship, any kind of relationship with my biological father, but now I've had 3 men in my life, otherwise, who've wanted me to call him Dad, right? I'm grateful. I've got friends that know me and all my stuff and still want to be around me. I don't know. But I'm grateful for that too. And be grateful for the journey. Deborah has always said that if we could get right back here, she'd do it all over again. And I always look at her and go, you're crazy too. Not that don't get me wrong, I love being married to her and I love what God's done. But there's certain things that I'd look at that and go, I can't do that over again. Right? But I am grateful that God has done what He's done. And I'm grateful that even when I didn't see it, God was working it out. I'm grateful that one day when Jason was being a doofus, came home from work, told his wife that, you know what, let's just get divorced. There's this girl at work, she's a hottie, and I'm just going to go and be out of here. She walked out of our kitchen, down the little hallway to our bedroom, was gone about 5 minutes, came back in and said, I don't know what's going on today, but as much as I'd like to kill you, God said he'll take care of it and get you saved and you'll be a godly man. So you better get saved soon or I'm going to kill you. That's what happened. That God moved in her long before he ever moved in me. At the times that when things weren't going so well in the family, in about 30 seconds one day, God just wiped that all off the plate. So I'm very grateful for the journey. And I already quoted this verse. It's by the grace of God that I am what I am. His grace toward me was not in vain. So live a life of gratitude. What a wonderful virtue. We have so many things to be grateful for, and yet